Now let me move on to another criteria where there could be some objections from the patent office, but this is a fairly straightforward criteria, and what we have seen is that you know in more recent times, this particular criteria is the usage of this particular criteria is gradually reducing. What this criteria is all about is that the Indian law says that computer programs per se is not patentable. Now, the important thing to highlight here is the per se part of it, right? Now, that has been included so that there is clarity with respect to this. So, which means to say that the computer programs. So, what are computer programs? Computer programs are essentially source codes. So, essentially, a computer program is a set of instructions written in such a way that a data processing system such as a computer can understand that particular language. So that is what is meant by a computer program. If we try to patent the computer program itself, which is the source code itself, that is not patentable, right? So computer programs are as such protected as copyright, but within the realm of patents, it cannot be patented, right? So source codes cannot be patented. But what can be patented is what governs that source code itself, right? So that's the logic that governs that source code is something that is patentable. Now, the computer program that I've shown here, let's say it is a snippet of a source code that does natural language processing and then provides some kind of a sentiment analysis based on natural language processing, right? Now, the source code that actually does sentiment analysis by taking natural language as an input cannot be patented. However, the broader system itself, which has a certain set of logic in terms of how we take that natural language as an input, how we end up doing this sentiment analysis using various aspects and eventually getting a result in terms of the sentiment analysis can be patented, right? So computer programs or source codes by itself cannot be patented. It is something that is protected as copyright. On the other hand, the logic or the whole principle based on which those source codes might be written is patentable. And in fact, it is better off to actually protect it at that level rather than protecting at a lower level, which is the source code level, because the same logic could be applied by writing a different type of a program, right? So if one were to try and protect the computer program, even if it were to be patentable, would not be a very intelligent way of going about this, because source codes can be very easily worked around, but the logic that governs those source codes is very difficult to work around. Now let me move on to the last of these criteria, which is algorithms. Now this is a fairly tricky subject, but luckily we have a lot of judgments around this, which makes the topic fairly easier. Now, what is an algorithm, right? Now, algorithm is essentially a sequence of instructions a computer can execute is called as an algorithm. Now, typically when we talk about any software invention, the invention almost always is about those sequence of instructions which a computer is going to be executing, and as a result of which we get some novel output, right? So every software invention pretty much can be categorized as an algorithm. So let's consider what could be an algorithm that cannot be patented vis-a-vis what can be an algorithm that can be patented. Now let's assume that there is some kind of a sorting algorithm that can organize data in a specific order. Now, in here, what you see is that we are trying to protect the algorithm without any context of its application, right? So from reading this, we don't know what is the technical outcome of this whole novel sorting algorithm. So which means to say that we cannot really anticipate what is the technical effect of this particular algorithm. So if a patent were to be drafted without any context of how this algorithm is going to be used in a specific application, it becomes challenging. So it is very similar to the mathematical model or the mathematical method criteria that we spoke about. On the other hand, when we talk about a patentable software algorithm, so we are looking at, let's say, we had a similar sorting algorithm for dynamic optimization of network traffic in real-time communication networks, right? So it is still a specific set of instructions which a computer is going to execute, and it is going to be executing in a certain environment. And in this case, the environment is in the context of telecommunication. And as a result of this algorithm being executed by a computer, you are able to optimize network traffic in real time, right? Now we see that now this algorithm is actually reduced or integrated into a specific field of technology. And as a result of integration, you have what is called as a technical result of it. And that becomes patentable. So those kind of algorithms become patentable. Now the takeaway here is that be it mathematical method, be it business methods, be it computer program per se, or be it algorithms, at the end of the day, the question that we are trying to ask is that, was there a technical problem that had to be solved? And as a result of our innovation, are we getting what is called as a technical effect or a technical outcome, right? As long as we are able to present our invention in such a way that it solves a technical problem and eventually that results into a technical effect or provides a technical solution, it is very, very easy to get a patent, even when it is a pure outright software invention. So whenever you are looking at applying for a patent, you need to ask the question of, where does my innovation lie, right? If you feel that your innovation lies in some technical aspect, although that technical aspect could be purely software, as long as your innovation lies or is trying to address a technical problem, and we are able to showcase that it is solving a technical problem and it results in some kind of a technical solution, then you are in a good place to go ahead and apply for a patent. And in a lot of scenarios, what you will end up seeing is that it is kind of borderline. So that is where professional expertise come into picture, wherein one looks at the innovation, and having all of this knowledge in the background kind of determines how do we actually position this whole invention in such a way that such objections should be reduced, and even when such objections do come in, we are in a very strong position to overcome those objections from the patent office, right? More from a practical standpoint, when we file any patent application for software inventions, one should definitely expect that the patent office will come back with a set of objections relating to one or more of the 4 criteria that I just spoke about. So that is definitely going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we have to start worrying about it, right? So what we need to do is, when we are applying for a patent itself, we should position our patent application in such a way that when such objections do come in, we are in a strong position to actually overcome those objections. So that kind of brings me to the end of my presentation. So if you have any queries, I think this is a good time to kind of look at those queries and address them. So one of the questions is, what is the cost of availing the services? So when we talk about applying for a patent, there are multiple stages of applying for a patent. So the first stage could be what is called as a patentability study, which is an optional step. But typically in a patentability study, one uses certain paid databases. We use a certain paid database wherein we cover patent data from about 100 odd jurisdictions. And based upon that, we try and identify, are there any other patent documents from across the world which might be similar to what we are trying to protect? And based on that, we come back an opinion on whether the patent can be granted or not. and we also assess whether it might have challenges with respect to all these different aspects that I just spoke about, right? So for something like that, typical charges could vary anywhere from about 30,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees, depending on who you engage with. Then comes what is called as patent drafting and filing. Again, when it comes to patent drafting and filing, depending on who you engage with, it could, I'm talking about somebody who does a decent job. It could range from about 70 to 80,000 rupees, going all the way up to about 1.5 lakhs. Then comes what is called as patent prosecution, which is the patent offices will come back with objections, say, citing certain patent documents from other countries, raising objections with respect to different criteria that we just discussed, to which one needs to respond. So a patent agent who is representing you ends up responding to those examination reports. Again, you're looking at an expense ranging from about, let's say, about 35 to 40,000 rupees, going all the way up to about 80,000 rupees, specifically in India. So these are pretty much the major expenses that one could look at in terms of the professional fee. But when it comes to the government fees, if you are a small company, you would be either recognized as a startup or a small entity, and the fees are like highly discounted. So throughout the whole process, you are looking at an expense in the range of about, I would say about 6,000 to 15,000 rupees is the range that you need to kind of keep aside, depending on certain things that you would do during the filing process, so on and so forth. I hope I addressed that question.
Hey, hi Karthik.
Hey, hi, Sudarshan.
How long does it take for us to go through this complete journey?
Yeah, so when it comes to the timeline, if we are specifically referring to India, there are two types of processes. One is the ordinary process, the other one is what is called as an expedited process. So if you are a company or an LLP, you could either register as a startup or a small entity. And if you are a startup or a small entity, you can go for an expedited process. And if you go for the expenses involved in an expedited process is not much. It's again, roughly you're looking at an additional expense of roughly close to about 10 to 12,000 rupees from a government fee standpoint. No additional fee, so to say, from a professional consulting standpoint. So if you're going for an expedited process, applying for a patent, which is the process before we get into filing of a patent, could be, I would say if we are doing a patentability study, drafting multiple iterations and filing, we are looking at a month's time to complete this whole process. And once the patent application is filed with the patent office, you are looking at roughly, between 8 to 12 months to eventually get a patent granted in India in the expedited process. Whereas if we are looking at an ordinary process, we are looking at at least about 2.5 years. It could be, in the range of about 3.5 years. But at the same time, what we need to remember is that, a patent grant is not necessarily required for you to, make your technology public or go into the market. What is required is you should have filed for a patent application before you hit the market. Because once you hit the market without applying for a patent, then you lose the right to apply for a patent.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the questions from Avneet is, in which areas of software technology most of the patents are currently being filed? As such, I don't really have a statistics as to which fields of technology most of these software patent applications are being filed. But my guess estimate is that most of it would be in terms of application software as a service, so on and so forth. And if we were to look at the kind of work that we are doing, and if you were to try and gauge from that, I would say a lot of work is happening around natural language processing, machine learning, artificial intelligence. These are some of the areas where we do see a lot of traction in terms of the kind of work that we are getting. But as such, in terms of the broader statistics, I would kind of extrapolate and say that it could be around those areas.
So suppose we take a AI model and try to make a business application out of it, and let's assume it's one of its kind, unique, pioneering application. Can we consider that as a probable choice for patent?
Oh yeah. So let's say let's consider some kind of a web app that is being built out. Uh, Now, like the example that I gave, right? Let's say the flow itself is unique, and we can associate that flow to some kind of a business flow, right? And the uniqueness is actually in the business flow, not necessarily in the technology stack that enables that business flow, right? Then it becomes extremely difficult to get a patent. But if to enable that new business flow, let's say there is some unique aspect that you do in the technology stack itself, then that could be patented. At the same time, yeah, it is many a times it is like a uh, eh, one needs to kind of really look at what is that we are trying to protect, what is the objective that we want to achieve. Is there some way wherein we can position the whole patent application in such a way that it feels like it's the technology that we are trying to protect rather than the business flow.